It's almost like a circle today. Since we started talking about Luis Suarez in the first hour, probably going to talk about him here in the second hour. So we go from Lima, Peru to Seattle, Washington. Find out what's going on in the Palouse with our buddy Nico Moreno. Nico, what up?
What is going on, John? SDH family. I'm a little high up there. How's everybody doing?
No, you're styling. You're styling. You're good. It's all good. You're rocking
Yeah,
and
it's the
rolling.
start of the NFL season, so I broke out the Raiders cap just for good luck, just for today. So bear with me. I am looking for a nice little Seattle Sounder hat as well as my lights. I'm waiting for, but it is a nice, cool morning here in the PNW. I am in my second cup of Joe
Uh huh.
and just ready to talk about, I'm sure, a
Uh
whole lot on League's Cup, and
huh.
then we'll eventually get to some MLS action.
That is true. We got a handful of matches because you can opt out of taking time off, and so 4 matchups this weekend. We'll run through those in a bit. But what I wanted to do with you, obviously, is lead off with League's Cup, and I'll just say it. I mean, we were breaking it down earlier in the week, and the defensive game plan against Messi and friends. Literally, since this is the first day of the NFL season, the analogy that I gave was you had man coverage by Seattle, or it was blanket coverage when they would play zone. But the second that Messi goes into the pattern, you bump him. You get him off his route, you bump him a little bit, you get him out of their rhythm, and the rhythm gets disrupted. And so the quarterback, when he wants to deliver the pass in the flat to Messi, he hadn't gotten to his point yet because he's bumped off at the line of scrimmage. And they made a point, Seattle did defensively, to get him bumped off his game to kind of disrupt the thought patterns there for Messi and friends in that matchup.
Yeah, and to put it in simplest terms, it was about taking one player out of the game. The way Bill Belichick does it, the way the big defensive minds do it is, if you're gonna beat me, it's gonna be with your tight end or your other receiver, but we're gonna take out your best receiver, and that's kind of what happened here, right? I mean, I think this was probably the best I've seen a team limit Lionel Messi. I think that Orlando's probably the only other team that does a great job at taking him off. But they just closed all his avenues. And as you mentioned, it was constant pressure of whenever he would pick up the ball or whenever he would even be in spaces where he could pick up the ball. And it was a collective effort. You wanted to keep the line of confrontation extremely high. Brian told you that right off the bat at the beginning of the week. They did that. So it was Pedro de la Vega doing a lot of defending, a lot of pressuring, a lot of making sure that he was able to bother Messi when he would have the ball. He would help out. It was Obed Vargas, a rock in his shoe that entire game, right? He was a shadow. Making sure that every time he got the ball, he felt some sort of pressure. Christian Roldan as well. Both pivots knew exactly where Messi was going to pick up the ball. When he was deeper in front of the 18, it was Yeimar Gomez Andrade. It was Jackson Reagan. It was Reed at times. I mean, it was just a collective effort to ensure that every time that Messi would get the ball, he'd pick it up in non-dangerous positions. And even if he did pick it up, you wanted him to play negative. You want him to feel the pressure. He was obligated to even try a couple of mid-range shots that were either blocked or just completely off by Lionel Messi. I think that miss that he has in front of goal has to do with a lot of frustration, has to do with just a lack of rhythm. They did not allow Messi to get in a rhythm. And I just thought that it was an overall great defensive game. And it wasn't just about Messi as well. I thought that Seattle's press was extremely effective. If they weren't picking up ball, they were forcing turnovers off of some poor passing from Inter Miami. I thought that when it came down to emergency defense, when things would break down, because there were moments when Messi and friends were able to put a through ball. They were able to get you on the counter, and the emergency defense by the Sounders was great. It was a block shot by Yeimar. It was a fantastic, phenomenal tackle last minute. into a shot of Rodrigo De Paul inside the 18 by Jackson Reagan. It was Obed Vargas poking the ball out of Messi inside the 18. I mean, it was just the overall effort by a defense that knew that they had to hustle, that they had to eliminate all of the connections that Messi and Alba and Busquets would have, and they didn't allow that Bluetooth technology, right? That um, almost by a sense of connectivity, right? That they usually have, they completely took it off. So credit to the tactics by Brian Smetzer and credit to the execution by every single body in that pitch.
On the day, shots on target, courtesy of our friends at SofaScore, dealing with Lionel Messi. Answer to that question is that. No shots on target officially registered by Lionel Messi. 2 off target, 3 blocked, 1 of 6 on the dribble, 60 touches, 30 of 37 passing at 81%. Had the one key pass. 1 for 3 on crosses, 5 of 8 on long balls, 3 for 10 on his ground duels. Lost possession 19 times. 2 times he was fouled as a part of it, and then obviously no defensive numbers. But that's the breakdown. No shots on target. 3 shots blocked, 1 for 6 on the dribble for Lionel Messi in that game. I can't remember the numbers like that.
No, that's credit. That's absolute credit to the Sounders. And I heard, was it the pitch? Was it the rough terrain? Like, look, at the end of the day, there was plenty of time for Inter Miami to get used to, accustomed to the field. There were opportunities. Agenda misses one in front of goal as well, and it all goes back to just the overall great collective effort. And I think that's why emotions go high at the end of the game. It's because there was so much frustration from everybody. And look, credit to mentally to this team. I still have not been able to confirm whether Messi told Pedro de la Vega that he would not be part of the national team as long as he was involved. But there was definitely a lot of chirping from Lionel Messi, trying to scold, trying to limit Pedro de la Vega's efforts, right? Then Rodrigo de Paul also goes down to Pepo and talks to him and makes sure. And there was chirping to the referee and credit to the referee for being very consistent throughout the game. So their inability to control and affect the game because of their aura, because of their legendary status, that was big. They felt disrespected. I told you that they needed to disrespect this team, not verbally, but just saying, look, you might be the GOAT, but today you're just one of 22 players. You're on the other end, and I'm going to treat you like I would anybody else. And credit to De La Vega, credit to Obed Vargas, credit to Christian Roldan, because they were not worried about exchanging jerseys at the end of the game with number 10, right? There was one number 10 in that field that shined bright, and it was Pedro de la Vega. It was not Messi.
And for those that may not know what Nico was talking about, Sounder at Heart and your tag team partner, Jeremiah Oshan. Headline: Leo Messi reportedly blackballed in quotation marks. Pedro de la Vega from Argentina national team. Subheader: Former MLS player Alan Gordon said an inside source, and yes, I did just use air quotes, told him that Messi engaged in some questionable banter with his countrymen, Jeremiah's article. And it goes with the Pedro de la Vega, what you were discussing, one of the least effective games since coming to MLS, and that's why I went into the numbers. So, according to Alan Gordon, on the Major League Journeyman podcast, Messi told de la Vega, quote, "You'll never play for the national team as long as I'm involved." Gordon then added he basically blackballed him on the field. Gordon cites an inside source for the information, spent 15 seasons in MLS, played for 6 different teams. Galaxy and Earthquakes are a part of it. Jeremiah continues. He says whether that's just in-game banter or a serious threat is obviously impossible to say, but it certainly casts a different light around a player whose image is generally considered pretty impeccable. For De La Vega, if he continues to play the way he has over the last couple of months, future will take care of itself. So that's the article with Jeremiah at Sounder at Heart. So I mean, like I said, we don't have any corroboration one way or the other, and I doubt we will ever get corroboration one way or the other when it comes to national team rosters and things like that. Interesting side port to that whole thing was that Pedro de la Vega, as you said, was a part of the team that frustrated Messi from one end of the day to the other there up there at Lumen Field.
Yeah, look, I've been a Pedro advocate all season. The man has arrived, and he had arrived, right? He had showed you exactly what he could give you. And in this particular game, he was a tempo setter. He was a guy that pinned back Ian Frey, that honestly had Ian Frey seeing little stars or little Tweety birds all game long because he didn't know where Pedro was going to come from. It didn't matter if it was a direct ball through the back line. It didn't matter if it was Pedro on the ball. It didn't matter if it was Pedro defending whenever Inter Miami would play out of the back. So Pedro was just so good. Every single cross that he put into the 18 had just venom, and it was gonna be a problem, right? And you see Osasa de Rosario early in that game just almost get to the ball, and couldn't quite get there. But it was that pressure on the left side that essentially at one point of the game in the first goal, Inter Miami's late to shift, and Jesus Ferreira, a guy that has been so important because of his versatility across this great run that Seattle's under, he finds Alex Roldan on the right side. Paul Rothrock makes a great run that kind of pulls Alba out of position. It's a perfect ball from Alex into Osasa. Osasa makes a great run, great header, and that's where everything starts off, right? So it's just credit to this team for just understanding what needed to be done in that game. But it starts with a guy like Peppo. It starts with a guy that's just being so good in so many ways, in so many aspects. And sure, after that, it's all about containing Lionel Messi, containing the ball, not allowing Sergio Busquets to find those spaces to put through balls. I thought I did a great job at once again pinning back those fullbacks or those wingbacks. We talked about it here in this exact same show. There was going to be space for Seattle to attack in the flanks, and there was a lot of space for Seattle to have. There were opportunities that were missed. And then Brian Smetzer with some very intelligent and bold moves again on the substitutions, takes off Pedro, takes off Paul Rothrock, brings in different players. Giorgio Menungu comes into the game with all of the energy in the world. He creates that, generates that PK that essentially Alex Roldan puts away with all of the composure in the world. And then just to put the perfect bow on top of a phenomenal game, Paul Rothrock, the Seattle kid, the kid that had always been told that wasn't talented enough to be on that roster, that I myself had been telling people that he'd been so good for the system, and I didn't get where the disrespect was coming from. That kid that at least 100 people in attendance decided to trade in their Lionel Messi jersey for a Paul Rothrock jersey. Yep. When he put that goal away, that 3-0 goal, that comes to a lot of effort, right? The ball's not really going to him. He just picks it up because he makes that hustle play. And then he has the ability to get into the 18, cross the ball on the other side, and make the 3-0. The stadium erupted. That record league cup record crowd just exploded in Lumen Field, and it was because it was that hometown kid. It was that guy that embodies everything that talks about this particular group: the collectiveness, the heart, the effort. That goal was just the perfect cherry on top.
So you're talking about this moment, huh?
Right to Rothrock.
Oh man, it gives you goosebumps. Absolutely, 100%, 100%. And Paulie Primetime is right, baby. Paulie Primetime is spot on.
Yeah, that was courtesy of our friends at Apple TV and MLS. Um, you get a moment like that, and then Schmetzer gives him the curtain call, and then match is over. And I know we have to talk about this, and there is some new information involving Leagues Cup and protests that we'll get in after this, but all hell breaks loose after the final whistle.
Yeah, look, I was calling the game for 13:60 a.m. there in Spanish, which was a great game to call. And obviously, I'm standing in the booth with the windows wide open, so you can hear the crowd. And the game is over, and we're talking about uh, history and culture beating a generic made up like corporate build roster to win games, and how young talent and hard can overthrow legacies. And all of a sudden I see some scuffle, so I take my phone out, and phone got a great zoom, so I put it out there, and I see Sergio Busquets get close to Obed Vargas, hit him with
A little short right.
a little jab to the chin. I don't care how soft that was. People on my comments said that's a punch.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a punch. He wasn't strong enough. Like, it's a close fist to my face. That's a punch.
Mm-hmm.
And Bowman Vargas goes down. Does he oversell it? Sure, why not? It's better than engaging in any sort of fights. And then everything breaks loose. I continue to stand on the notion that the Sounder players were doing everything in their power to contain or rip off Inter Miami players from their teammates rather than engaging back with punches,
Right.
which Cello did, which Busquets did. And we'll talk about Suarez here in a second. But when that mayhem was happening, it was the Inter Miami players that were swinging for the fences. I said it yesterday on the sidelines, a podcast that's in sports show that's here in locally in the Pacific Northwest. And I said, look, this could have turned into the Malice in the Palace if the Sounder players would have started throwing kicks and punches, because people would start coming off the stands.
Yeah.
And it could have been so much worse. But it was that composure that I think held it all together. And it wasn't more gasoline added into that brawl.
Yeah, I think though by the end of the day, I think that whenever Leagues Cup Disco comes forward, you're probably going to see envelopes for John Bell, Jackson Reagan, Suarez, Busquets, Chelo Wegant, Tomas Aviles, and Maxi Falcone, who had somebody in a rear chin lock. So that's my guess. You're probably going to see 8 envelopes, most of them heading to Miami. And we did get into early this morning what Major League Soccer could do through the eyes of the MLSPA. And if it's more than 2, if MLS jumps in, we don't, like I said, we don't know what Leagues Cup Disco is going to do. If Leagues Cup Disco says, 5, 6, whatever, then MLSPA, Major League Soccer, can come in from behind and tack on. They've done things like this before, like with Open Cup and things. So if it's more than 2, it has to go to an appeal because of the collective bargaining agreement. And so we got into the dynamics of that. But the next stage in this goes to Major League Soccer and what they are going to do. And some of the folks in our Twitch pitch are like, they're not going to do anything because it is Messi and friends. What does your gut tell you?
Look, I see your MLS and Leagues Cup committee or people who are responsible, but I'll race you Inter Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts with them. It should be on them. For Inter Miami, it's easy to wash their hands and say, oh, look, Messi, is the league coming after you? Is the league trying to suspend your buddy and friend and good old pal, Luis Suarez, for what he did? Nobody wants to disturb Lionel Messi. So Inter Miami is going to just kind of wash their hands of the whole thing and just allow them to do it. But as the direct club that has that player representing that badge, should they not be the ones that internally discipline everyone that had some additional non unnecessary or vile, repugnant actions, because I think that's where it should start. It should be Inter Miami. They should have already had a statement out. They should have already addressed the situation. They should have already talked to Luis Suarez and said, look, internally, we're suspending you for X amount of games.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how we go hard on a guy like Nuhu for throwing a ball on the stands, but we don't go hard on something that is as vile as what we saw after that game. So to me, there will be suspensions. There will be at least 6 games. That is where I set the bar for Luis Suarez because of what he did, because he went after an elderly staff member that's trying to get away from him, that he steps with his cleat on his shoe to not allow him to get away from him. You see the staff member trying to look away, trying to get away, and then you spit in his face. That is beyond deplorable. And Luis Suarez is a tiny man, and maybe a great soccer player, but an incomplete human being, and he should be made an example of. And I hope that it's Inter Miami, and I hope it is MLS, and I think it will be MLS that ultimately upholds those suspensions to all the players that you talked about, Falcone and Aviles, who had no reason to be there, throwing punches, and Cello trying to sucker punch people from the back, and you're having Freddie Juarez trying to grab you, and Stephen Fry trying to stop you so you don't go hit somebody. So those aggressors to me are the ones that should have the highest penalties, because they're trying to protect themselves and get away from their players. Jackson Reagan and Jay Bell get disciplinary actions, then that's fine as well, as long as those others are more stringent and they show the severity of what they did.
News from our buddy Mike Gramajo down in Orlando yesterday that Orlando City, the purple team, filed on Friday a formal complaint to Leagues Cup organizers regarding the officiating of the semifinal match against Messi and friends. Purple team loses 3-1. Controversial refereeing, and this is Mike's copy from West TV. Refereeing that went both ways eventually saw Orlando reduced to 10 when David Brecalo was sent off on a PK call. Orlando City defender and captain Robin Janssen also shown a straight red following the final whistle when Janssen allegedly verbally insulted match officials, according to Leagues Cup Disco. Janssen's red card appealed by the team, not successful, and obviously waiting for comment from Leagues Cup. When asked if the team had received a response from tournament organizers, club spokesperson told West TV the complaint was acknowledged. So there you go. So not the end for the Disco on the Disco committee for Leagues Cup. They now have Orlando City filing a formal complaint to organizers regarding the officials in that matchup in the semifinal too. So we got to keep an eye on that as well.
I think that's important. I think that more of these are going to come. I think that Inter Miami has now done a great job at just becoming this villain, and what at one point was acceptable, which should have never been acceptable, but you kind of knew that the league was going to protect the goose that laid the golden eggs in Lionel Messi, but now it's become so in your face, right? It's become so obvious that, yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, look, that game between Orlando and Inter Miami is decided by ultimately not giving Angulo that penalty kick in the 18. That's a clear PK. It's a clear PK to me. I mean, there's literally no question. And then everything else that happens afterwards, including the red card off of the PK that is awarded for Orlando City, right? So against Orlando City. So all those things to me are obvious. And look, I've talked to some GMs and other front office members from different clubs, and they've all said, look, if it was my guy that did that, there'd be some internal disciplinary actions. And I really hope that puts some sort of pressure on Inter Miami to do so as well, regardless of who it is.
4 matches this weekend in Major League Soccer, and it's because you can opt out. You can sit there and say, no, we're playing. And so you have four matchups. Fire and Revs, Dynamo and LAG, all caps in FC Dallas. All the home teams are favorites there. Fire a minus 139, Dynamo's a minus 127, all caps are a minus 102. It's changing in front of me literally as we're talking. And then Sunday Night Soccer, Sporting hosting Austin, Sporting favored at a plus 143. Are you taking the weekend off, or are you going to be watching those?
I mean, I was hoping to watch some games, but these are some sleepers. I mean, these are some. Good thing it's at 5:30 Pacific. I mean, any earlier, and it might be nap time for me, for sure. But I mean, I guess the LA Galaxy Houston game would be interesting, just because the LA Galaxy have kind of resurrected a little bit of their soccer. You saw Painter have a great goal in the last weekend. You saw Peck get more involved. Marcus Reus, I feel like he's also coming along. So that one might be interesting. Houston, man, is a team that I was just on ESPN Houston with Glenn, and it's crazy how much they are in dire need for something to change in Houston, right? They have these crowds that are not going. They have this team that's in disarray. So that one I'll be fine to watch. I think the LA Galaxy are heavy favorites here on my end. What's the goal composure on that one? The goal compose.
All right. So Houston and LAG. It is, let's see, as we sit here and look at over-unders, 2.5 a minus 163, 3.5 a plus 149. So it flips at 3, or it's a plus 102.
Yeah, I don't mind the 3.5 at all. I think this might be a game with some goals. I mean, it was 3-2 between them and St. Louis. I would think that it's gonna be a little bit along those lines. So I do like the 3.5. I do like the LA Galaxy. The Chicago New England's interesting. New England has started to move in the right direction. Obviously, this is a FIFA break, so there are going to be some missing players from some of these teams, but yeah, I think Chicago's another good one there. And the Sporting Kansas City Austin, I like Austin on that game for sure. I really like what I saw from them last weekend. I know it's San Jose. I get it. I mean, they are very vulnerable, to say the least, when it comes to defensive abilities. But I do like what they're starting to do on their own, right? I think Bukhari is getting some traction. He's becoming that guy that they purchase, right? The guy that is gonna stretch out defenses, the guy that's gonna be a magnet on that end. And Uzuni as well. I feel like he's really coming over for this team. So yeah, I like Austin on that one. Sporting Kansas City continues to have issues of their own, regardless of coming from a win. But I like Austin in that one.
All right, what's going on, Sounder at Heart and Pulso Sports? What do folks need to know?
Absolutely, Lou. We have a ton of content from Leagues Cup still on Pulso Sports. You want to look at some of the recap of that the brawl. You want to look at some of the fantastic interviews we had afterwards. Do you want to hear Osase call in Miami some sore losers? Do you want to listen to what happened in that moment where Christian Roldan looks like he's going to take that PK and he's holding the ball, and then Alex Roldan goes and takes it? I thought it was awesome that Alex said, look, that was part of the game plan. Why did we do it? Because everybody was going to come at Christian. He was going to take the heat. Everybody's trying to get in his mind. And then all of a sudden, I get behind him and take the PK. I thought it was brilliant from the brothers there. So you could hear that, of course. You could hear from Macherano. You could hear from Brian Smetzer. The guys have 5 days off, so they won't be back at Providence Swedish Clubhouse and toy store for quite some time. But at the same time, we will have some more content from us. You're obviously going to get this show at some point there. On Friday, we'll have Jeremiah and I, what we learned this week. And then, of course, on Monday, kickoff with Ari Lillenwall.
As always, my friend, great to see you on Thursdays. Have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. We'll catch up with you next week. Always great to catch up with you, as we always do for Thursdays.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy the NFL weekend. Hope your fantasy teams and other things that you do with football come across along the lines of this audience as well. Thanks, everybody, for all the love, all the support. Love being on the show, and we'll see you next week.
You got it. There he goes. I'm gonna fix my fantasy team because they stink, and so we're average. Tomorrow